Hi guys, I'm Courtney.
And I'm Lisa.
And we are the hosts of The Book of the Dead, a true crime podcast based out of New Jersey, where we tell you about the most obscure cases that you may have never heard of. So join us in the Book of the Dead library for another chapter of the Book of the Dead wherever you get your podcasts. Bye guys.
Darkcast Network. Indie pods with a dark side.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey, Dylan.
I tell you, fall has descended completely upon the mountains of WNC.
Is that true?
I think so.
Well, I know the tourists have descended.
I don't even want to go down that path. They've descended for sure. The pandemic kicked it up a notch. It's been relentless ever since. And I gotta say, it's nothing against tourists in general. We're tourists sometimes. Our friend Tish came up here. They were incredible people, very nice, intelligent people.
These people are not nice.
The type of people that come here is just, I've never seen anything quite like it. They're rude. They don't obey any traffic laws or any rules of any, or even manners.
They act like they own the place.
And they act like they own the place, and they keep gritting on you like you did something wrong.
Literally had somebody in a moving truck yesterday that's like 5 houses down from us tell me I needed to get out of their neighborhood.
And they'd been here for half a day.
And they've lived here for half a day.
But anywho, other than that, yes, it's chill. It's so chilly and so folly, if you will. Heather got straight up and made soup today. It's a soup kind of day.
It is a soup kind of day.
And black bean and rice soup. It's very tasty. You got to try it. Heather, how are you doing?
I've been feeling ratchet AF this week.
Are we going to share?
No, we don't have. Look, I've been feeling quite confrontational. I've had a lot on my plate. I'm pretty stressed out, and I reached like a tipping point this weekend.
You did? Yesterday in particular.
Yeah, and so sometimes you just got to get a little ratchet.
Sometimes it feels good to get down in the gutter.
It does.
It does. Yeah, and when you have a place out of the gutter, you get to go back to it when you're done. It can be cathartic to a degree.
It can. Talking a little shit to people you hate feels good.
It does, but
it's like getting girls pregnant. It feels good, Dylan.
Oh, yeah. Yes, it does feel good. And I must say, people we do not hate are our listeners. And we cannot wait to, Heather has another incredible story for you today.
I'm getting ready to get ratchet right here on Mountain Murders.
Girl, you ain't ratchet.
I don't know about that, bro.
That's what a ratchet hoe would say.
I'm a little trashy.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
You know, we've claimed to be recycled white trash, and when the going gets tough, we can be really trashy.
We can throw hams,
and we can throw hams. You can catch some hams if you want. And but I think our listeners know we're just we're a bit trashy around the edges, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe they are too. Maybe they can relate, and you know what? That's okay.
Maybe they can, and I'm sure all the locals here understand where we're coming from as far as the traffic.
I did make a post on the gram today.
Okay.
That all rants and raves are sponsored by our local tourism development authority.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You're welcome,
TDA.
that.
Dylan, I have a vintage tale for us today.
Really?
Traveling again in the Wayback Machine.
Girl, I got her waiting outside first.
And this is one I found just through some research, thought it was an interesting account, and wanted to share it with everyone who listens to Mountain Murders.
Let's go ahead and dive in on this chilly day.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
You get your little hoodie on? You ready?
Yeah, I had to get ready.
Frank Bliss Enslow was born in Wheelersburg, Ohio in 1853.
Okay.
At the age of 18, he moved to the new city of Huntington, where he got a job as one of its first police officers. He also studied law and became a successful attorney. Additionally, Enslow began investing in a number of gas, oil, and banking enterprises. In this way, he accumulated a fortune. Enslow reportedly was one of Huntington's first millionaires. All right.
Well, I would be. I can't even fathom that, so it's hard for me to relate.
He founded the Triple State Gas Company and Columbia Gas and Electric Company, held leadership positions in the C&O Railroad, Huntington Water Company, and the Bank of Huntington. So this is a guy who's in the know. He's got his fingers in all the jars.
Yeah,
and these are jars that make money.
Well, these are also monopolistic types of industry as businesses as well. I mean, there's not any. Once you're in an area that's certain utility company or water company, there's no competition. So you can really just make all the money without ever any fear of ever losing out.
Well, just having vision during this time to know these are the industries of the future. Water, electric, the railroad, how crucial these would be.
Yeah.
And to have the foresight to know, and that you kind of get in on the ground early, as they say, and you make your money.
And this is the very thing that fascinates me about industrialists from back in the day. They truly did have vision. And I'm sure a lot of people told them they were kooky and crazy when they started these types of businesses.
He served as president of Huntington National Bank and the West Virginia Board of Trade and helped to organize Huntington's first hospital. Enslow's wealth was showcased when he constructed a palatial 27-room mansion at 3rd Avenue around 1896. The home was designed by a local architect, T.U. Walter, and was noted for its extremely ornate interior. It featured carved wood paneling, stained glass windows, silk wallpaper, marble fireplaces, Tiffany chandeliers.
Silk wallpaper? I never heard of such.
And even a garage with a turntable floor.
What?
Yeah.
See, that's like, I mean, I've seen these things in some very opulent mountaintop homes where you have it's kind of hard to get in the drive, and they'll pull their like Lamborghini in there and then in the garage, and they'll turntable it around out the other way. So that's pretty amazing to have that back in the day.
In the 19th century.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Also, Dylan, you have seen silk wallpaper.
Oh.
The Biltmore house.
Oh.
The Biltmore estate.
Well.
That home has very opulent silk wallpaper.
Well, that would make sense.
That's why they have it covered in like the plastic. They're sort of like plexiglass.
To keep it from deteriorating.
And so people can't be like touching it. They don't want you over there fingering the wallpaper, Dylan.
Hey, can you stop fingering the paper, please? The wallpaper?
Yeah, well, some years ago, I remember visiting the estate, and during the tour, they were refurbishing some of the wallpaper, and it's very expensive to get this silk wallpaper because, I mean, they don't really make that anymore, so it's a very extravagant expense.
So with the marble, the silk wallpaper, he's going way over the top. And like you said, literally putting his wealth on display for all to see.
Oh, yeah. The Enslows also had a Stanley Steamer automobile. It was like one of the first on the block, Dylan.
So Stanley Steamer made cars? And now all that we have left are just the carpet cleaners. Yeah.
The house and other nearby upscale homes led to 3rd Avenue being dubbed Millionaire's Row. The Enslow house was a major center of social activity in the early 1900s. Wealthy and prominent families from across the state of West Virginia were entertained at the Enslows' lavish parties. Juliette was educated in genteel Southern values and made an incredible hostess alongside her husband Frank. Frank was a dynamic figure whom many considered a founding father of Huntington. His acute business acumen with a flair for leadership made him revered and popular. He was a West Virginia Democrat, and he had a great deal of influence politically and also support. Many people asked him to run for office. They wanted him to run for governor, actually. But Frank never showed much interest in becoming a politician.
So, well, I mean, political capital on top of being very wealthy. That's a very good combination, typically.
I mean, has anyone ever asked you to run for governor, Dylan?
Well, they have, and I tell them that my years of being an asshole is probably going to hold me back.
Well, Dylan, I also feel like you actually would be a great shoo-in for political office.
What? You really think that?
You would be great in Congress. Let me tell you why. You do a lot of sitting and looking.
Okay.
And I feel like that's really all you got to do.
Well,
I mean, our Congress, they look like clowns, and they do a lot of sitting and looking. So I think you might fit right in.
I must say, they say you can't judge a book by its cover, and I think my cover sometimes might be off-putting to people. Extraordinarily handsome. My physical
They're
prowess.
very intimidated by you.
Yes.
I mean, just the raw sexuality.
Yes.
It's like if Prince and like Mick Jagger had a love child with Brad Pitt.
And Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
with the brain of Steve Jobs.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But what they don't know is I would die on the hill of fairness for the people. And I would actually make a really good legislator. And I would never give up. And I would never, ever take pork barrel spending money or PAC money, super PAC money, or any lobbyist.
Okay, but I have the most important question for you.
Okay.
Would you legalize it?
Oh, I'd legalize everything.
At the federal level?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, then you get my vote, sir.
Well, I've legalized it here at the local level.
At the Mountain Murder Studio?
Yes, everything's legal here at the Mountain Murder
So we're a sovereign state.
We are.
At the Mountain Murder Studio. All right, back to our story. Frank Enslow died in 1917. The house remained under the ownership of Juliette Buffington Enslow, Frank's second wife. The couple had married in 1901. Juliette was the daughter of Huntington's first mayor, Peter Klein Buffington, and a descendant of one of the oldest families in Cabul County. So we have this affluent woman, an affluent family, okay? Because her great-grandfather was one of the first white settlers into this area that became, Huntington, Cabul County, into this region. So the Buffington family had deep roots and were considered like a prominent founding family. So much like Enslow. And we all know, the rich kind of marry the rich. People marry, especially during this time, people married within their social circle.
Yeah, I think classism or almost a caste system like you'd find in India, modern day India even. I think it was much more, it had a lot more influence on people's decisions because it's almost scandalous to marry below your social standing during this time.
Oh, I've been watching The Gilded Age on HBO. I needed a substitute for Bridgerton because I don't have a trashy drama to watch, so I had to watch The Gilded Age, and it's amazing. Like, of course, it's all these wealthy people, but just the social climbing and status and the old money versus the new money.
Yeah,
and it's just like, y'all are rich. Who gives a fuck?
Yeah, it's
My money spends just like your money, right? Just the attitude that, like, because you come from old money, you're better than the nouveau riche.
I think that
ridiculous.
It's a case of very wealthy people have a lot of time on their hands. And so they have to have other different things to worry about besides putting food on the table and paying your bills.
Because they ain't doing no work.
No. No.
Idle hands, bro.
And I would never want people attending to me to the level that they do in these types of rich families. Or like even we watched Rome. We was watching the series Rome on HBO, and they have slaves or employees, however you want to look at it, like literally washing them and drying them and just doing everything for them. And that's just way too much invasion of my personal space.
You don't want to be Eddie Murphy and have some hot chick be like, the royal penis is clean, your highness.
No. And you think I'm lying about that when you're like, well, what if it was hot chicks? No, I don't want you all in my business like that. I don't want you touching me all the time like that.
You want to wash your own penis.
I'm very capable of washing my penis. I wash my penis good. Like 3 or 4 times in a row.
I'm not sure that's hygiene, Dylan.
Oh,
something else.
Honey, you know this is one of the cleanest penises you've ever seen.
It's beautiful, Dylan.
Thank you.
It's so attractive and fresh and clean.
It smells like a.
And I'm pretty sure I could say I'm confident that when Outkast sang about so fresh and so clean,
they were singing about my penis.
They were.
You know what my secret is? The fresh linen Febreze. They say it's not for your genital area, but I disagree.
I am deeply concerned, and I think we should discuss this off record. Back to our story, Dylan. The Enslow mansion became the focus of a sensational crime in 1936. On the morning of Saturday, October 17th, Enslow's chauffeur, so this is Mrs. Enslow, because she's the one that's, taking over the property from her husband. She's residing there. Her chauffeur, Mrs. Enslow's chauffeur. I'll get this out.
Driving Miss
See,
Enslow.
I'm so distracted about your fresh and clean penis that I cannot think, Dylan. A black man named Judge Johnson was the chauffeur. He was sweeping the sidewalk when he discovered Juliette's billfold discarded in the front yard. Recognizing the wallet, he offered it to a woman named Mrs. Bricker, who was assuming her morning duties at the mansion. She was a housekeeper who had been employed by the family for many years.
Can I say Judge Johnson is an incredible name?
Judge is a great name.
I think so.
I like it. So Mrs. Bricker went upstairs to check on her mistress, and that is when she made a horrible discovery. Juliette Buffington Enslow was found dead on her bedroom floor with a towel wrapped around her neck. She had been beaten, stabbed in the head, reportedly with an ice pick type of weapon, and possibly strangled.
So a brutal attack.
Brutal attack. The local coroner, a man named E.X. Sculler, believed strangulation was the cause of death, but also noted the abrasions on Juliette's face, along with 2 puncture wounds on the woman's forehead. Can you imagine an ice pick stabbing you in the head, in the forehead?
No, I'll tell you.
That would not be pleasant.
I'm sure people knew I was going to say something to this effect, or some listeners. But an ice pick has always scared me. Because of what it's designed for, to punch and penetrate hard ice. So, I mean, you really are going to get through bone. It's always scared me.
It looks like a lobotomy tool.
It looks like a lobotomy tool. It just looks, kind of evil just looking at the device or the tool, however you look at it. And no, I could not imagine someone with all their force stabbing me with an ice pick.
No.
And overhanded. Like, oh my gosh.
No. An investigation determined that a diamond-crusted watch and 2 diamond rings, one reportedly a 12-carat and the other reportedly a 5-carat ring, had been stolen. Yeah, this is like a fucking ice rink on this woman's finger.
Holy cow.
12-carat diamond ring.
Dude, she's just around the house chilling with like 30 carats on her or whatever. I'm not even going to try to do. With a bunch of diamonds on her rings. Just sitting around the house.
Right. Well, one would later turn up in a gutter outside the house in 1940. So we'll talk more about that in a minute. But it is reported that days later, the watch was also found inside a drawer at the house. So they're thinking that these items have been stolen from her. And then as they go to investigate, a few days later, they find the watch in a drawer. And then some years later, they're going to find one of these diamond rings in a gutter outside the house.
Years later.
In 1940, yeah. So this will be several years after the murder. Enslow's son, Charles Baldwin Jr., was living in the home at the time with his mother. So we've got Mrs. Enslow and her son, her adult son, the only 2 living in the home. And then they have several employees, the chauffeur, the housekeeper.
Probably a gardener, a groundskeeper.
Detectives were headed by L.J. Swan, and they were joined by a private investigator that the family hired. The detective from Cincinnati was to aid in the local investigation, so they bring in their own private eye, not trusting the local law enforcement.
Which was a very common practice back then.
Bloodhounds were brought to the mansion to track the killer's possible steps. Inside the home, bloodstains were found on a can opener. Could this be the sharp instrument that caused Juliette's head wounds? Like perhaps it was the can opener instead of an ice pick. Either way, I don't want to be stabbed with one of these things.
Did the killer enjoy a can of peas on the way out? We don't have answers to these questions.
Yeah, some mandarin oranges or something. Blood stains were discovered on the towel, which was located around Juliette's neck, and there was also some blood on a pillowcase located on the bed. A pair of pajamas belonging to her son Charles were also seized during the investigation, and the state lab in Charleston will eventually match the blood type to all the items, because this is when forensics were very new and we were still using blood typing.
Well, yeah, and a lot of times I feel like people will talk about new forensic technologies and methods, but I also think it affects the investigator's train of thought or how they approach something. I think that's just as important as any of the forensic technologies.
The evening before Juliette's murder, it had been raining, yet the wallet that was found by the chauffeur outside was bone dry, leading police to suspect someone had planted it on the lawn.
Or maybe they did truly discard it.
But it had been raining.
Oh, so they think, okay, I got what you're saying. It would have been too long after whatever happened. It would have been wet if it had been out there the entire time, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's typically what happens when you leave an item outside and it's raining, it gets wet.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, moving along. Due to the fact there were no fingerprints found at the scene and no sign of forced entry, law enforcement theorized Juliette's murder was an inside job, that she knew her killer.
Well, you also have this big home, and you have these various employees and attendants that work there. So it might not be that easy to sneak in and out of without someone seeing you.
Juliette's funeral was held in her beautiful mansion, and she was then laid to rest in Spring Hill Cemetery. The funeral was attended by West Virginia's high society, many of the millionaires who had frequented elaborate parties at the home during happier times. Some days later, her son Charles, he was finally arrested on October 25th and charged with murder. Investigator Leslie Swan told the media, quote, "There is nothing I care to ask him. We have our case. We are satisfied." Charles Baldwin Jr. was the son of Juliette and her first husband, Charles Baldwin, a well-known attorney. He had served as a captain in the Army Corps. Charles Jr. graduated from Washington and Lee University with a law degree. Before the murder, he had briefly been married to a woman named Hazel Hatfield. She was granted a divorce from him, and there aren't details really available about why they divorced. Charles was known to have a very active civic and social life in Huntington. A few years before his mother's murder, Charles was working as a coal mine operator. He lost a leg during a mining accident. Charles was known to wear a prosthetic leg and required a cane for walking. Mrs. Enslow was given a prescription for her son, and he was allowed 5 small doses of a narcotic each day, which she administered. So that's a little strange. Most of the time, they don't give your parent your prescription when you're an adult person.
No, that is a bit strange.
To monitor your medication.
And I'm sure he dealt with some lingering pains and issues with his amputation.
Well, I'm sure there's got to be a lot of issues with this is antiquated.
Yes.
Medicine that we're talking about.
And the prosthetics technology was very, very simple.
Yes.
So I'm sure
he dealt with chronic pain.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Because of the family's importance in Huntington, the trial would prove to be tricky. The lead prosecutor, E.E. Winters Jr., was excused from his role due to his interpersonal relationship with the Enslow family. The judge had to bring in outside prosecutors because these people all mingle and hang out and they're members of the same social and civic organizations.
Well, I think that's a good call.
The key piece of evidence used by the prosecution was Charles' blood-stained pajamas. Judge Johnson and Elizabeth Bricker, who were witnesses that provided testimony about the morning of Juliette's murder. Now, if you remember, Judge Johnson is the chauffeur and Mrs. Elizabeth Bricker is the housekeeper. So they're relying on these two for their eyewitness testimony. Once Mrs. Bricker discovered her employer, Juliette Enslow, dead, Judge Johnson went to find Charles Baldwin Jr., who was in his bedroom asleep, and he went to wake him. Johnson testified that Charles rose from the bed already wearing his prosthetic leg. When attorneys asked if Baldwin normally slept with the leg on, Johnson said, quote, "Not as far as I know he wasn't. That's the first time I ever saw him do it."
Yeah, but I would say, playing devil's advocate, how often do you go and get him from bed? How often do you go into his room and get him for something? How many opportunities have you had to see him get out of bed?
The prosecution theorized that Charles had been wearing the leg in the commission of his mother's murder, returned to bed wearing it, maybe because he required some kind of help removing it. So he didn't have someone there to help him.
Well, then I would say, who helped him put it on? I do.
Well, perhaps she did.
Hold on a second. I could be on the team.
The prosecution's case was developed around the idea that Charles Baldwin Jr. was a drug addict who would do anything to get the necessary fix he desired. Colonel George Wallace, co-prosecution, told the jury it was a case based on circumstantial evidence, but, quote, if the circumstances show guilt, we expect you to find a verdict of guilty as charged. He also said drug addicts were known liars, and Charles Baldwin Jr. could not be believed because of his drug use.
Wow.
Now, this is something that we've seen attorneys try to use in modern day to discredit a person's character.
Oh, yeah. All you got to do is...
just because you have used drugs or have a history of drugs, then that just makes you a big liar and a piece of shit.
And
Nobody can believe you.
I think that's a ridiculous sentiment, personally.
It is ridiculous.
Because just because you were getting high, and you could say, well, what was the substance you were using? What were your faculties about you? Could have made you, misunderstand what was happening. You could argue that.
This is a prescription drug
right.
that has been given to him from a doctor. It is a physician-regulated drug. It is not like this Charles guy is out buying black tar heroin
or opium.
In
it was readily
19th
available.
Century. Yeah, I know. But I'm just saying, he's not out like buying drugs. It's not like he's scoring street drugs to feed this heroin addiction that he has.
It's not like he went down to the drugstore and got a bottle of Laudanum.
He's got medication given to him by a doctor
Being
that his
administered.
mother oversees and administers to him.
That's not exactly a drug addict, in my opinion.
Well, according to the prosecution, Baldwin had written a bad check and was being pressed for payment in the weeks leading up to his mother's murder. Elizabeth Bricker testified that she had known Baldwin since he was about 8 or 9 years old. He had only started taking the prescription medication after the accident, and she had never heard the mother and son argue or fight over the medication. So she's ultimately sort of denying this idea that Charles is a drug addict and that he killed his mother for drugs or for money.
Well, and I think that's a fairly strong testimony in my mind. If I'm on the jury and you're trying to portray him as this kind of
like desperate addict,
then you're likely going, in the run up to this event, you're going to, I would expect to hear them arguing over the medicine, or hear him, or someone overhear him trying to get his mother to give him more, maybe before it's time for him to get a dose. Anything.
Mrs. Enslow kept the medication locked in a drawer in her dressing room, according to the housekeeper, and Charles had access to the key at any time. Mrs. Bricker also testified that Mrs. Enslow did not keep cash in the home. Mrs. Enslow had withdrawn $50 from the bank in the days before her death. She had paid $12 to the cook and had made a few small purchases. So there was no real cash in the home, which was something that Charles knew as well. So her point, really as a witness, is saying, look, I don't think he killed her to rob her. He knew she didn't have any cash. So the only thing that she's got in the house would be like her jewelry.
Right, which you would have to liquidate.
And, the items in the home. Maybe some silver, I'm sure there was some very nice china, that kind of thing. But this is not like quick cash that a desperate drug addict is going to kill her and take the $50 and go score his drugs.
And she also pointed out that he, if he wanted, had access to the medicine that was being administered by his mother.
Yes.
If he knew where the key was, and at any time he could go get the key and get into the dope box.
Bingo, Dylan.
I think she's a fairly strong witness for the defense.
Meeks, the defense attorney, this fellow Meeks, he questioned a nurse who was staying with a next-door neighbor at the time of the murder. The nurse was caring for the sick neighbor and claims that in the middle of the night, when this murder allegedly would have been taking place, that she heard a woman scream. When she peered out of a window, she saw headlights from a car, and they were parked in an alleyway that pointed to the Enslow home. After hearing some tapping noises, the nurse then saw the car speed away from the Enslow house.
You think the tapping noises could have been footsteps?
It could have just been a raven tapping at the window. I'm not sure. But yeah, she heard a scream, saw this car with the headlights pointing at the house, and then sees somebody get in the car and drive away.
Okay.
Yet, the defense attorney, Mr. Meeks, John Meeks, argued that Charles Baldwin had a regular supply of medication and that there was no indication that he was abusing the narcotic drugs, the prescription. The defense said Baldwin was innocent and that it was a midnight prowler who was responsible for murdering Mrs. Enslow. Now, here's the part that caught my interest, Dylan. Mrs. Enslow hosted a bridge party at her home on the night before she was murdered. The wealthiest residents of Huntington were in attendance, and one newspaper described the witness list as a social register because they brought in people who were in attendance at this bridge party.
So it's like the who's who of the social clubs.
Yet none of the attendees had any information to offer at trial about Mrs. Enslow's murder. Charles Baldwin Jr. maintained his innocence from the moment he was arrested until the end. After a trial in the winter of 1937, Charles Baldwin Jr. was found not guilty on March 25th. Whether or not Baldwin murdered his mother and what the motives for the crimes are remain unknown. Now, on February 27th of 1940, one of Juliette's diamond rings was found in a catch basin behind the Enslow mansion. It was described as a large diamond solitaire set in platinum with a black onyx mounting.
Wow.
Huntingtonians were skeptical that such a large ring could sit there for almost 4 years and survive even the 1937 flood, which was called the worst flood in history.
Well, I mean, it's literally in a catch basin. You know, it kind of gets, who knows? It could have got wedged in there. I'm going to assume it's, I don't know. I know gold's quite a bit heavier than water, and it likes to settle and stay in place, and that's how people find it years and years later. I'm not so sure about a diamond, but I guess it could be possibly some similar density or something, you know. What do you think? What do you think the odds? I think it could have just got wedged in there in a good spot, and it's not going to move until someone comes and gets it out.
Well, it could have, but, you know, they're really trying to pin this murder on her son and that he did it. But it's showing me, okay, she had a house full of people the evening before, a bridge party.
Yeah.
She could have been killed there could be a number of motives here. And if she had, even though she's got the richest people in town at her house, that doesn't mean that these people couldn't be guilty of murder.
No, because rich people are capable of jealousy, hate, and all those horrible emotions typically tied to murder in some form or fashion. And unless you had definitive proof that catch basin was searched thoroughly after the murder, then there's nothing that leads, nothing proven to me that ring couldn't have been there all that time.
Well, I just think, who's to say she didn't have a house guest that left a window open, left a door unlocked,
yes,
a cellar door or something where they could have come back and gotten into the house after the party.
It could have even been one of their attendants or employees.
Or their children.
Their drivers or something like that.
The murder of Juliette Buffington Enslow was a tragedy. The family abandoned the house in 1937. It was bought by R.R. Steele, a local funeral home, who ended up moving. It's like a local funeral business. They basically moved into the house, took over this big mansion. For the next several decades, the house operated as the Steele Funeral Home. The director and his family lived on the second floor. In 1965, the business was acquired by A. Ray Black and renamed the Steele Black Funeral Home. But on August 23rd of 1977, a fire broke out in the basement and destroyed the house.
Oh, no.
Black and his family barely escaped. The charred remains of the Enslow mansion were soon demolished, and today a used car lot occupies that property.
Wow, that's kind of an anticlimactic end to that beautiful home, yeah?
Juliette's daughter, Dorothy, went on to marry a man named Leslie Combs. The pair had Spendthrift Farm and were known for thoroughbred horse breeding. Dorothy was involved in the racing aspect of horses and was known for her philanthropic, I can't talk today, involvement.
Her philanthropic. Yeah.
Well, whatever. She's a rich bitch who gave people money, okay? for charity shit.
Thank you for breaking that down into layman's terms, Heather.
Yeah. I can speak intellectually when I need to.
I see.
Yeah, not really.
Oh, gosh.
This, for me, brings up some interesting things here. So, did Charles murder his mother?
I didn't hear any kind of smoking gun proof, or I didn't even hear. Now, the bloody pajamas, I would like to have, and I'm sure there was only, limited information you were dealing with, especially with a case this old, but I would like to know more about that. Was he wearing the pajamas that were confiscated off his body? That's telling me something. If you have blood splatter of any sort on your, pajamas, or were they possibly in the room when she was killed, and there was a transfer in that fashion.
Or was it the type of stain that he had gone into the room, discovered his mother,
yes,
had maybe knelt down and got blood on his pants,
right? There's not
on his sleeve.
Yeah, we don't really get a good description of the transfer.
This was a difficult case to research. It was relying on a lot of old newspaper articles, and they were not super clear. There's not a ton of details. Couldn't really find a whole lot of court transcripts or anything from this because it's such an old story.
Right.
So I was relying on mostly newspaper accounts.
Yeah. But I just don't think there was that strong of a case against him having been the one who killed his mother. What do you agree?
Well, at the time, he was living under his mother's roof, but not practicing law and seemed to be unemployed at the time. So there seems to be this opinion that he murdered her for money. But it is likely that he was set to inherit a fortune, but he would have to share it with a stepbrother, Frank Jr., and a sister, Dorothy, because Juliette had 2 kids. She had Dorothy and Charles.
Okay.
So, he might get some money out of her murder, but at the same time, he's not going to get the whole fortune.
Well, it's one of those situations. Is he better off with his mother dead or alive? And I might argue that he's okay in an okay situation with his mother alive. He's living in this nice house with her, and sounds like all his needs are being met. And I don't know that he would be better off if she is dead.
She's probably helping him put his leg on and off, right?
She's helping him put his leg on and off, and walking around with big ass diamond rings on.
Exactly.
So I don't know. I don't know if he really wins if she's been murdered.
Dylan, I just don't know.
You know what? We never will know. So yeah, but I like the story though.
You're welcome, Dylan.
Thank you very much, Heather.
Yeah, I wanted to put together an episode. I thought it was a very interesting case, but like I said, there was not a ton. I couldn't do like a deep dive into everyone's background because there's not a bunch of information out there.
You should just made it up.
Okay.
And be like, he was a stunt man. He rode bicycles in the movies.
It's just always interesting when you have tales of like an heiress who's been murdered.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yeah.
I guess we just don't naturally think about the rich being targeted.
Well, I see. If I was rich like that, I would have like mean ass dogs and all kinds. I'd have security, bud. You wouldn't just come busting up in there and take my big diamond rings off my fingers. I would have some mean ass German shepherds and some hard nosed, questionable characters manning my estate for me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would do. And I would pay them very handsomely so they would not even take bribes from people.
Well, if you need to know more, Dylan, Charles Buffington Baldwin died in 1955, and he was buried at the Long Island National Cemetery in East Farmingdale, New York.
Okay. All right. Well, where do we go from here, Miss Heather?
I don't know, babe. I just wanted to tell you the story today. Now I'm done.
Okay.
Now it's time to go get Ratchet.
She's spent, y'all. She is spent. She done finished upon me.
We are what? Why you always gotta be so weird?
I don't know.
We're gonna be back with another Murder House episode.
Okay.
Right?
I'm liking the Murder House series, honestly.
Leading up to Halloween, we have some more spooky things to discuss.
Yes.
In the next couple weeks.
I can't wait.
And we'll have an episode for you on Wednesday. More murder houses. And Dylan, we may have a bonus episode dropping as well.
I really think that we owe our listeners a bonus episode or two in the coming month. So I think that's something we should do.
Okay. And you can always find extra content if you go to patreon.com/mountainmurderspodcast.
You can.
We've dropped some Patreon exclusive episodes over there in the past few weeks. So make sure you go check out what we've got for you there.
No, and we know that you guys, y'all know about the Patreon for the most part. And we don't want to, scream at you about it every episode. We just want to get to the story and stick to the criteria Heather has laid out for us. But I must say,
well, I've laid out criteria.
I guess.
That you'll sit there and be quiet and listen to me tell you a story. Is that the criteria?
She'll even let me eat Chris chips while we record. And I think that's ridiculous.
No, never.
But we do really appreciate and love all our patrons that have supported the show, even during these trying times, economically and such. And thank you very much for that. It means a lot to us.
All right, Dylan, you have a great day.
You too.